Thank you, Angela. Thanks, y'all, for checking in the chat. It is incredible to see how much of Ohio we have represented in this room. And I believe I saw some folks from outside of Ohio as well. Just grateful that everyone is here. All right. So I feel really lucky to have known Lynn Tramonte for years now. And I'm just so grateful to the Ohio Immigrant Alliance for springing into action for Springfield after that really disgusting vice presidential debate where one candidate just told blatant lies about an Ohio community and Black immigrants who live there, really for the sole purpose of riling up his base. It is no surprise to me that Lynn and others jumped right into the work. So today, we're going to hear from several incredible organizers who have been part of a coordinated effort to continue showing up for Springfield and the Haitian community there, but who are also lifelong immigration activists who have been working for years and will continue to meet the challenge of the moment that we're in. Our 5 panelists are tenacious and brilliant leaders whose work comes from a place of deep love. And we'll get to hear from them about the current moment that we're finding ourselves in around immigration, which is informed by their personal experiences and their leadership in their communities for many years. Okay, we're just going to give a brief overview of our panelists before we get to hear more from them directly. Viles Dorsainvil is the co-founder and executive director of the Haitian Community Help and Support Center, which is an organization in Springfield, Ohio, that helps guide and assist refugees and immigrants, especially Haitian nationals residing in Clark County and surrounding areas. Houleye Thiam is the program director of the Mauritanian Community Center, a project of the Mauritanian Network for Human Rights, which is an organization fighting for human rights, civil rights, and better opportunities for Mauritanians, both in the US and in Mauritania. Jona Hilario is the co-director of OPAWL, building AAPI Feminist Leadership, a statewide grassroots community of Asian, Asian American, and Pacific Islander women and non-binary people in Ohio, whose members represent the diverse diaspora from Asia and the Pacific Islands. Claudia Longo is the RAISE program manager at Planned Parenthood Advocates of Ohio, who has advocated for immigration reform and immigrant rights since 2013. I cannot believe that was over 10 years ago. And she serves on the boards of the Ohio Immigrant Alliance and an organization I'm gonna say incorrectly, Avanzamos Unidas. Apologies for just butchering that, Claudia. Lynn Tramonte is the director of the Ohio Immigrant Alliance, a group of Ohio immigrants and citizens who are working together to protect the dignity and rights of all individuals who choose to make Ohio their home. She is also a communications consultant at Ana Kawana. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We're just so lucky and grateful that y'all are here. So we're just going to jump right into it. I'm going to ask our first question, and Angela and I are going to go back and forth with the panelists. So Viles, you have been feeling a lot of pressure ever since Springfield entered the national discourse on immigration last year. And your organization has been doing so much to educate and inform both the Haitian Ohioans in Springfield, but also informing everyone else about your community in Springfield. In your outreach, you always invite people to get to know and understand each other. Questions for you are, why do you take that approach? And what results have you seen in your outreach to people outside of the Haitian community in Springfield? Again, thank you so much for the work that you're doing and for being with us today.
Thank you, Avery, for having me. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to the panelists. This is a very wonderful work that you guys are putting on today, where we can share our voices. And yeah, my name is Viles Dorsainvil, the executive director of the Haitian Support Center in Springfield, Ohio, and pronounce he, him. So yeah, I think that since last fall, we've been experiencing some kind of um, situation, unusual situation in Springfield. And I realize that some people do not really take time to learn from each other. And whenever I have the opportunity to share with the media or to go to the town hall meeting, I always making sure that I call people to take a little time to learn from each other, because my experience in Springfield is that um, people who are making bad comments sometimes, or being afraid of the strangers, how they call it, is because they do not give themselves enough time to learn about the neighbors or the new neighbors and everything. Because I believe that the misinformation, if I can say that, a great percentage of the misinformation is because of people who do not know who are the Haitians, what what is our culture, our history, and everything. And in our organization, not only I am calling people to take time to learn from each other, but we develop a strategy just to go to the community and tell our story and tell who we are, and also try to answer some hard questions about our culture, or whatever people have to say. So I have been taking this approach because I see it works. And most of the time you won't understand somebody if you do not or try to know that person or walk in the shoes of that person. You won't be able to know the person. So this is why I take this approach, and I think that this approach can work in every community. And instead of spreading misinformation or talking bad about your neighbors, take time, have a conversation respectfully, and we will learn from each other. And like this, we will develop a better community.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Can you say anything about what, the outreach to people outside of the Haitian community? How is that, yeah, what results have you seen as a result of this approach that you take?
What I see is that whenever we got the opportunity to share with people, for them to know who we are, and they say, "Oh, seriously," and I didn't know that. And I see that now more people in the community have that kind of approach of asking questions. I see the local residents, they come to our office and have a conversation with us. When we have the opportunity, that we go to them as well. And what we are doing now is we work with the school district, or the local organizations and institutions. We try to develop education, cross-cultural education program to teach them about Haitian history, Haitian culture, Haitian cuisine, and everything, so that they might know who we are. I think that so many local residents are more open now in terms of the feedback that I get, just to learn from the Haitians, instead of just saying things that they do not know. I see a positive impact on this area.
That's so powerful. Thank you so much. Thanks for the ways that, yeah, you're just building community in the truest of sense. Okay, Houleye. You often say this beautiful saying, which is that telling your story is the secret to survival. Can you share what that means to you?
Sure. Thank you, Avery, and thank you everyone for joining. As you said earlier, I'm so happy to see the representation throughout Ohio, but also people joining this webinar from in other places, just trying to listen to what we have to say. I would like to also take the opportunity to thank the Ohio Immigrant Alliance, of course, you and Angela, for doing this. This is such a noted conversation at this time. Telling your story is a secret to survival. This is a quote I'm borrowing from, his name is George, a poet, and really I made it my own because I feel like it's so deep and it resonates from me, not only from my culture, because in Africa, usually throughout Africa, people have told stories, and these are verbal stories that were transmitted from generation to generation, where grandchildren are learning from their grandparents' traditions and cultures to keep that going. But also really telling your story is a secret to survival is something I say to really portray that you have to be able to show people who you are, which is what Brother Viles was talking about earlier. You should not be absent from the conversation table. When you're no longer in this world, you let people fill in the gaps. But if you're able to actually, while you're alive, tell your people who you are, when you're able to dictate how you are perceived, how you are received, how you are understood and remember, you are able to control your legacy when you're no longer here. And when I put that in context of today's immigration and what's happening, what I'm really advising for my brothers and sisters is to be part of the conversation, is to be able to throw your grain of salt in what's happening and make sure you're present to really be able to direct the conversation and to also be able to introduce who you are and who you want people to believe you are and to see you as.
That was so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Could you tell us a little bit about West African griot tradition?
And again, Africa is a very diverse continent. I don't know all of the traditions, but in my country, Mauritania, or even the neighboring countries like Senegal, the African griot tradition is really a tradition that's told in a verbal way. I know in the Western sense, everything is written. We have books, we have, notes, we have different kind of things where it mostly is written. But in Africa, especially in the traditional sense, things were passed down generations verbally in general. And we have this picture where you have a whole family coming together under a tree. I'm not trying to portray the stereotype, but at the same time, to me, that's a positive for where people are able to gather to tell stories and where grandparents are communicating with their children and grandchildren and telling them the importance of passing on the generation and really telling them the values of that family. And that's something to continue to portray, not something to run from.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so much of I think what we're trying to do today is captured in what you shared with us of declaring boldly and proudly like who you are and your role in a community. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, and related to that, Jona at OPAWL, Building AAPI Feminist Leadership, one of your values is the power of storytelling. And you've run some really powerful media campaigns, one of them being the Love Has No Borders campaign in 2021 that Houleye was actually a part of. So can you tell us a little more about that?
Yes, thanks for inviting me to be part of this really important conversation. So the Love Has No Borders campaign actually came about because OPAWL has always been interested in disrupting prevailing narratives about AAPIs. So the model minority myth looms large for our communities, including us who are immigrants. This is what seems like a positive stereotype that, people of Asian descent are more successful because of some innate drive to achieve. But it is actually a narrative that is used as a wedge between the AAPI community and other communities of color, and it keeps us from seeing that our struggles are connected. It also obscures the fact that a growing number of people in our communities continue to be negatively impacted by our dysfunctional immigration system. So for example, the number of undocumented people of Asian descent grew from 1.4 million to 1.7 million in 2010 and to 2022. So that makes about 1 out of 7 undocumented immigrants in the US as people who came from Asia. So that's a lot of Asian and AAPI folks who are impacted by the uncertainty and the fear and the anxiety that comes with being undocumented. Another aspect of the campaign is us being in the Midwest. It is always assumed by many that Ohio, unlike, the coast or the border states in the South, is not affected by immigration issues. So the campaign uplifts the very real and very human stories of people from our own communities and other BIPOC communities in Ohio who have experienced being separated from their loved ones and have experienced trauma caused by our broken immigration system. So our hope is that by hearing these stories directly from your neighbors in Cleveland, Columbus, Akron, and other places in Ohio, that people's perspectives would shift to see that an unjust immigration system does not affect only people over there, but that people in our very own communities are being harmed. So another aspect of that campaign that was highlighted is also the generational trauma that these immigration policies inflict. The impact of present bad policies echoes over multiple generations. It's not just the people who immigrated, but their families and their family members afterwards. But the same way that this harm echoes across generations is also the way that the blessings of immigrations are perpetuated. People will continue to make difficult choices to migrate for the people they love, to keep them safe, and to provide them a better life. So the title Love Has No Borders is descriptive of people's current realities, right? That borders do not keep out love, but it is also a picture of what we want to see in the future, where man-made borders no longer exist to separate us from those that we love.
That's really beautiful and powerful, Jona. Thank you. I dropped the link to the Love Has No Borders campaign in the chat, and we'll also be sending it out afterwards. So really highly recommend everyone take a look at that because it is a really beautiful project. So Lynn, you've written about the heart-wired approach to strategic communications, and it was popularized by Wonder Strategies for Good and Goodwin-Simon Research. Can you tell us what is that approach? How do you use it? And what is an example of how this framework is used in other social issues as well?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Lynn Tramonte, Ohio Immigrant Alliance. So what we've heard so far is about immigrants telling their own stories in their own words. I'm going to take us into more of the discussion about if you're an advocate, how do you advocate for fairer immigration policies and processes? So I've got my communications consultant hat on right now. These research groups, Goodwin-Simon, Wonder Strategies for Good, many others have done a lot of deep listening sessions with people to understand their opinions on immigration and other social issues. And what they've learned is that people make decisions based on their heart, not their heads. So people believe that they are far more informed about immigration policy and how it works than they actually are. And they make decisions based on how they feel about the person that is offering them information or the people that are in their communities. So when we come at people with a bunch of facts about how immigrants are contributing to the tax base and commit fewer crimes than US born people, and all this data that we have, people are not necessarily listening to our information because we haven't first told them who we are and why they can trust us as messengers. They want to know that we share values and that they share values with the people that we're talking about. So we have to start our conversation with a shared value, such as everybody wants to live in a safe community. Everybody wants to be able to have their work respected and their families respected and to feel like they are able to bring their best selves to the world. Those are some shared values that we can talk about. And then you also, another sort of thing we need to do more in communications about immigration policy is modeling interactions between people who are immigrants and people who are not. And Viles and all the work that Haitian leaders in Springfield and around Ohio are doing are really showing this in action. Because when you look at people in Springfield and when you read any article about Springfield and the reaction, it's always Haitian Ohioans and US born Ohioans working together. It's people coming to Haitian restaurants to try the cuisine, yes, but it's like a mingling, right? So the other learning from Goodwin Simon and Wonder Strategies for Good and deep canvassing and all this other deep research is that showing people from different backgrounds doing things together, building things together is powerful because it allows people to put themselves in the picture and kind of be able to build more empathy because they can see a character like them in the picture. Oh, I think, did you want me to talk about, you said to give an example from another social movement? Yes, I'll be real quick. So this is an example that many of us have lived through. I'm talking about marriage equality. So back in the late 90s and early 2000s, the narrative about same-sex marriage was a fear narrative. It was it's very similar to the narrative today about immigrants and trans people. And researchers like Goodwin Simon and others working with gay and lesbian groups did a lot of conversationing or speaking with people to kind of understand what was behind their sentiments. And they found that people were very conflicted because they knew gay and lesbian people in their lives and they wanted them to have the same rights as they did, but they had also been told that same-sex marriage was a sin through their religion or through culture. So the transition that advocates made was to talk about the values that we all share, that we all want to live in loving families, that we want to be able to take care of our children. They depicted same-sex couples in relationship with other people in community. And what went from a lot of states passing anti-same-sex marriage laws ultimately to the Supreme Court saying that same-sex marriage was legal all across the land in just a matter of 10 years or so. So that's something we all lived through. I'm not saying that the work is done in terms of marriage equality or equal rights for gay and lesbian people or trans people. Obviously, that's not the case. But this was a culture shift that many of us lived through, and it happened because the narrative changed, in my opinion.
Thank you so much, Lynn, for bringing that up. As a gay person who looks a lot older than I actually am, I was just resonating with how deeply, what everyone on this panel is saying about the power of stories and like connecting across difference as people reminded me of the wins around marriage equality. Absolutely. So yeah, thank you so much for lifting that up. Okay, so. Claudia, so glad that you are here. And as another person who works directly in media, you've worked as a freelance writer for several local publications and held a role as the director of community outreach for La Mega Media. As a former journalist, what are some of the trends you have noticed in the way immigration stories are often reported? And how can immigrants and advocates ensure the media reports more, multidimensional stories about immigrants?
Well, thank you, Avery, and thank you, everybody. I'm so honored to be a part of this amazing panel. My name is Claudia Longo. I'm the RAIS program manager at Planned Parenthood Advocates of Ohio. And it's going to be very hard to follow up after these amazing panelists and what they have just said, which is absolutely everything that I align with and I believe needs to be done to advance a more holistic approach about immigration. But as someone who worked in media and was paying a lot of attention to what the media has been saying for many years, because I believe that this is obviously not a new subject. Immigration has been attacked for decades in this country, and part of it is the way we talk about it. So first of all, I would like to make a distinction, and because I'm bilingual, I speak Spanish. Spanish is my first language, on how immigration is covered depending on the outlet. If it's local, if it's national, if it's in Spanish versus if it's in English. And basically the way immigration has always been covered in media at the national level has been problematic because the right has owned the narrative for a very, very long time. And even moderate networks right now have caved in on the messaging of the need to limit immigration in this country. And that is part of the problem, giving the illusion that the country is completely out of control and more restrictions and deterrence are the solution, even from moderate talking heads. It's part of the problem because that is what we constantly get to hear in these streaming services, big networks everywhere in the country. So I would like to see, as everybody has said in this panel before, more stories about how people can resonate with the stories of immigrants. Because I believe we are more similar than different as human beings. We share a lot of the reasons why people chose to come to these countries. So I think showing more of those stories will be a very positive way of talking about immigration in media. I would also like to see a little bit more talks about how broken this system is, and more analysts talk about how the destabilization of a lot of the countries where people come from have created the need for people to seek better opportunities for their families, and how we need to fix the system in a comprehensive and permanent way to create pathways for legal immigration, which right now is very limited, complex, and imperfect. I think we all agree that the talking point is always, yes, I'm all for legal immigration. I agree that we should have more immigrants, but do it the right way. Okay, let's talk about that. What's the right way? What are those paths? How is this very complex immigration system not allowing people to have an opportunity to apply? And even if they are lucky enough to have an opportunity, sometimes a small clerk mistake will put you back down into the end of the line and back to a non-status situation. So let's talk about more. Let's talk more about that, especially in media. I think that would be important.
Amazing. Thank you, Claudia. This next question is kind of related to what Claudia was just saying around kind of owning the narrative and the messaging and how we're talking in this moment. This question is for everyone, so I'll kind of just go around. But how are you and your organization talking about the new Trump administration with both your community and also the public? So Houleye, we can start with you and the Mauritanian Network for Human Rights in the US.
Sure. Thanks, Angela, for the question. The way we're talking about current times or this current immigrant narrative is really be able to, is in a couple of ways. With my community, we have chosen and been intentional to not sugarcoat things. We got to be able to tell the truth. The Trump administration does not like immigrants. I think other than Elon Musk and Melania, I don't think he likes anybody else. He wants everyone else to go. So we have to let people, our communities know that the way he has campaigned and the way he's currently governing basically shows he does not want immigrants. I mean, he says it in a nicer way, saying, I don't like the illegal ones, I like the illegal. He shows that his dismay for immigration, especially immigrants of color. So we tell our communities that we also try to spread power, not panic. Basically, we tell people, yes, you are here as an immigrant. Yes, these are very scary times, but you still have rights. As a documented or an undocumented immigrant in this country, you still have rights. So we do a lot of know your rights events, letting people know things such as simple as if ICE knocks on your door, you don't have to open that door. You might not be documented, but that's your home. So you have a right not to open that door unless you have a warrant. They show you a warrant. We also tell people to have a plan, to be very pragmatic about it. If you have kids, put an emergency plan together because it could happen. You might very well get deported if you're not documented. We try to be as direct, as truthful about that. We also try to inform people that, again, they have rights. And we urge those who are able to talk to the press, to do interview, even though there's still a lot of fear around that. We encourage people who have the courage to be as out there as possible to do so. Again, to tell their stories, because telling your story is a secret to survival. I'm gonna say it again. You gotta be out there. You gotta be able to exactly explain how this is impacting you on a personal level, how this is impacting your children who are being dropped off at school and come home might not find their parents, how this is impacting conversations at the dinner table, knowing that one parent might be deported, how this is impacting you going to work, to really be able to find, to work at that job, to pay for your rent, knowing that your eyes might very well raid your job and you might not come home. Talk about these stories, make a plan, but also know that you have rights. You have rights, you have rights, you have rights. Whether you have a green card or a citizenship or not, you only may have a work permit under Social Security, you still have rights in this country.
Amazing. Thank you, Houleye. Houleye, do you want to go next and talk about the Haitian Community Help and Support Center and how you guys are talking about this moment?
Thank you once again. And we are honest about the current situation. We tell people the truth. We try to be open-minded and being respectful, but we have to let our citizens know that we are experiencing an unusual time. And as my sister just said, we had a lot of training on Know Your Right. And the thing is, since after he was elected, the president was elected, there have been some kind of initiatives from a local level, from the local leaders and organizations. And there has been a new group called Springfield Neighbors United, and I think there might be some folks on the call here. And the initiator was Dr. Carl Ruby, and we joined him and other people in the community to better organize ourselves and mobilize the resources that we have to support the folks, and making sure that they are aware of what is going on, and develop personal plan and family plan, because we wouldn't like to see that parents being detained and leave their kids behind. And it's a very good initiative, and I think that they meet every now and then to make sure that they develop new plans. And Springfield Neighbors United is a very, very well organized structure, trying to reach out to churches, organizations, institutions, to make sure that we help, or we send the signal to the community, the immigrants community in Springfield, that we are standing by their side, to keep them updated on whatever is coming out, for them to know what to do. So they know that it is an unusual situation, but our responsibility is to make sure that we accompany them as best as we can in this time. So so we're being honest, and making sure that folks know that anything can happen anytime, because as I always say, that this administration is not specific of what they are looking for. They, to me, in my perspective, they try to put everybody in one basket. Sometimes they say that they were after criminals. But now, if you are undocumented, you are automatically fall into the category of criminal. And undocumented doesn't mean that the immigrant is a criminal. So attacking the birthright of kids is another thing. So those executive orders, they are scary. And people are aware of that. And I was in a Zoom meeting yesterday with another group from another state, and they say that before it was like people who have that kind of fragile status that came to them to ask questions, but now people with green card still come to the office too to ask questions, because they also are being panicked of what is going on. So no one is an exempt of what is going on now. So we keep the conversation, and we are making sure that we help the citizen to be ready of any potential things that can happen.
Thank you, Viles. Jona, do you want to share how OPAWL has been communicating?
Thank you. Yeah. So one way we've been talking about this moment is by connecting it to what our communities have experienced in the past. So for example, yesterday February 19 was a National Day of Remembrance, which commemorates 83 years since the signing of Executive Order 9066 by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. This EO led to the forced removal and incarceration of more than 125,000 Japanese Americans during World War II. So the same narratives about our communities that were used then was also used during the war of aggression in Southeast Asia, after 9/11, while Muslims, Arabs, and South Asians were being surveilled, and for the Muslim ban in the first Trump administration. And the same narratives are being used to justify all those inhumane policies. So we also just recently saw that Trump has already talked about using the Alien Enemies Act, which was used to justify Japanese incarceration, and which is also why this administration has been characterizing people seeking asylum, from countries that we helped destabilize as invaders. So we know that the villains may be different each time that this happens, but they are using the same playbook. So these are all attempts to dictate who belongs here in the US and who doesn't on the basis of race, faith, nationality, class, and immigration status. Why that's important to know is because we know that our communities have seen this before, and we have history and experience of coming together to resist through organizing, advocacy, litigation, protest, mutual aid, and solidarity. So we also have our own playbook, right? So what I want to let people know and to get people thinking more about is kind of where they fit in this journey, right? In this map of resistance. And I just wanted to share like what helped me start was the question, what is breaking my heart right now? That was what led me to people who, like-minded people who had a purpose that resonated with me. And if you already belong to a group or an organization, I think the next important question for all of us is, what is my role right now? Because currently we're all drinking from a fire hose of awfulness. And that is intentional. That is meant to paralyze us into inaction. And knowing clearly where you can contribute and how you can help will help us be less overwhelmed. Because no one person is meant to solve all of these things that we're talking about, right? But we need to learn to be more dependent on one another than we've ever been before, because the opposition is counting on us to despair, and that leads us to isolate ourselves. So that's what we're talking to our members about.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jona. Claudia, Planned Parenthood is known for their reproductive rights work, but with the RAISE program, you're specifically advocating for reproductive rights for Latinos. So how are you responding to this from the intersection of reproductive rights and immigration?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of what the RAISE program does. So this program was created to ensure that all people, including undocumented immigrants, have access to affordable reproductive health care. So we achieved this by utilizing a grassroots approach, which involves organizers from the Latino community. And this approach helps us build trust and effectively address the specific needs of the community. Our efforts include pushing for policies that protect and expand access to reproductive health and immigrant rights. We advocate for legislation that supports the health and well-being of Latinx individuals, recognizing the unique challenges they face. So one thing that I want to point out is like we talk a lot about attacks from the administration, from the federal level against immigrants, but let's not forget all the efforts being done from the state level and sometimes local levels to implement policies that are against immigrants. So I would like to talk, for instance, about legislation, a bill that it has been introduced in Ohio. So we are keeping a very close eye on this bill. Is the HB 42. I don't know if anybody in the panel or in the chat has heard about it. It was introduced recently, the beginning of the month, and it will require health centers to report on the immigration status of its patients. If passed, HB 42 would impact patients needing emergency care. Instead of receiving the treatment they need, they will be reported for their immigration status, harming them in the process. And this bill is harmful and is an invasion of our patients' privacy and violations of HIPAA. So the state is proposing to make health centers send reports to the governor about the immigration status of their patients. And we, not only this is, like I said, a violation of patients' privacy, but it is also a deterrent for people to seek the health treatments that they need. So this is a very, very dangerous piece of legislation being introduced in our state legislation. So we're keeping an eye on it. We are going to be sending information to those who are paying attention to what's happening. And if needed, we're going to be calling for actions about this. So going back to the work that we do in RAISE, we care about the individual and the community needs. This means providing comprehensive services that go beyond just medical care. So we offer education on reproductive health, support for navigating the healthcare system, and resources for overall well-being. And because the program is focused on the Latino community, we do that in a culturally relevant manner. So not only because of the language, we speak the language, we understand the barriers that our community has because of the language, but also the cultural relevance of approaching these issues in a way that resonate with our communities. And to empower the Latino community, we understand the importance of a holistic approach, like I said. So this involves addressing social determinants of health, such as economic stability, education, and access to safe environment. So we partner with different local organizations that are Latino-led and that are already doing the work and providing services and programs to Latinos in the community. And we provide information, resources. We help each other find what are those needs and bring them to our community in the hopes that we help them better. Overall, the program is dedicated to creating a sustainable movement for reproductive justice and uplifts and empowers the Latino community through accessibility, advocacy, education, and community engagement. So yeah, that's a little bit of what we do. And if you can share our links, we have opportunities to get involved and get information about different events and actions that we are participating in, and also all the policies that we are keeping an eye on around the state.
Amazing. Thank you, Claudia, for sharing information about HB 42 as well. And finally, Lynn, Ohio Immigrant Alliance has been playing a really key role as a statewide leader around immigration. And I think it's something we're all very thankful for on this call. So how are you talking about this moment, both to the public, but also all the immigration organizations that you are supporting?
Yeah, so one thing we're doing is stressing that migration is as old as time. It's as basic as breathing. People move for safety and opportunity every day, right? They move from Kentucky to Ohio and they move from Kenya to Ohio. It's nothing to be afraid of. It's going to always happen as long as humans exist. And, you know, in my opinion, the immigrants that I've worked with and known, they're freaking heroes. Like, the people, what they have overcome to get here, right, is just incredible. And those are exactly the kind of people that Ohio needs, that Ohio wants, that Ohio needs to have to become a dynamic, forward-thinking state. So, you know, again, back to the rubric, and I also just got back from a training with Anat Shinko-Osorio at ASO Communications. So back to the way you think about a message, her rubric for messages: values, villain, and vision. So I just laid out the values, right? That people come here for safety and opportunity. Who wouldn't do anything to take care of their family? That's a value that many people can share. The villain, in this case right now, the Trump administration, they do not share our values. They do not think immigrants belong here. They're sending ICE into our communities to abduct our loved ones and our neighbors. And we don't, and that is wrong. Ohio is home. Immigrants are part of our families and communities. And then the vision, what do we want? We want an Ohio where everybody can bring their best self to the table, where people can live in freedom, go to school, work, enjoy life, and not be afraid of doing basic things like driving your kids to school, where every person's work and every person's contributions, volunteer, et cetera, is respected. And we do need to change the immigration laws to make this happen. We do need Congress to act, but we can also stand up. We have a lot of power. We've already shown the power of community education in blunting ICE kidnappers coming into our homes and communities, trying to take people away from us. So we do have power, and we do need congressional reform. But our vision is basically a world where nobody has to live in fear. Oh, and I also wanted to explain, I think if you were here in the waiting room before we started, you might have seen a video with some different imagery up there. The other thing that we do at the Ohio Immigrant Alliance is we create something called the Ohio Migration Anthology. It's a serial book of written, visual, and performance art from people with a connection to Ohio and to migration of some kind. And it's a way for us to reach new audiences and just basically make the same point I just made earlier, which is that migration is as old as time. And we're really blessed to always be able to partner with the Cleveland Association of Black Storytellers, African-American women who are poets and quilt makers and doll makers who have participated in each of our volumes so far to show how African-American migration north to Ohio, there's a lot in common with international migration today. So we're really blessed to have that project. And then the other project that I showcased was illustrated memoirs, which is not a project of the Ohio Immigrant Alliance. It's the project of an organization called Make Tank in Cincinnati. Kate Curry, she works with public school students in the Cincinnati public schools for them to tell their stories, write their stories down and illustrate them. And they're beautiful. So I urge you to check out the illustrated memoirs, purchase some of them, purchase the anthology. And these are young immigrants and refugees who were telling their own stories in the way that they want to be represented.
Thank you so much, Lynn. So many good resources were just shared in the chat, the things that Lynn were mentioning. So check out the chat if you were looking for any of the links to the specific pieces that Lynn was mentioning. Okay, this question is for Houleye. So Ohio is home to an estimated 8,000 Mauritanians, which is the largest population in the US. For both the Mauritanian community that you've been working with, but also the broader immigrant community, what advice do you give immigrants who are in media interviews with reporters?
Thank you, Avery. Absolutely. We love Ohio. Ohio is housing the biggest Mauritanian community between, as you said, Columbus, Cincinnati, even Cleveland now. We have a huge community that comes here, as Lynn was saying earlier. Really, we often get asked this question: why are Mauritanians in Ohio? And it's like, I mean, it used to be that in the state people had like reasonable cost housing and jobs, and that's what humans come for. There's no magic in this, why they come here. There's nothing here. It's just they come for housing is not as low cost as it used to be, but it used to be very affordable, and that's why the first Mauritanian came and the second one followed, and then that's how we build communities. People come where they find people that are like them and that they identify with. As far as what we advise our community members and anyone who are in touch with, as far as in the immigrant community, in terms of giving interviews, in terms of talking to reporters, I mean, these are unprecedented times, and again, we lead with that. Talking to them about, I often get reporters coming to me asking to get community members to do interviews to talk about their own stories, whether that's a story about an asylum seeker or how these new policies are affecting their family directly or things like that. So when I get these requests, I go to the people and I mean to community members and talk to them about and try as much as possible, as long as it's not harmful to them, to convince them to give that interview. Because again, I go back to my initial point. We have to be the one to tell these stories. We have to be the one to talk about the impact, because we have so many allies in the communities, and we've always been grateful to Ohioans, whether that was in Trump 1.0 or Trump 2.0. We've always seen Ohioans gather around us, be with us, give us the support, and really identify with who we are. But as much as someone who's wanting to help you would like to do that, they cannot be in your shoes. You have to be the only one to tell the story. You have to be the only one to talk about how this is impacting your own child, your own life, your own household. So again, I am an organizer and I love my community. And this is what I tell the asylum seekers often, who are very scared to be out there. And often we talk about things like, you can talk as an anonymous person. You don't have to give your name if you're afraid. But again, please be brave enough to be out there. And one of the things that are happening, especially now with this new Trump administration that was not happening before, is that I've seen is that the tendency is to retrieve. The tendency is to hide. The tendency is to be so afraid that you make yourself small, you make your community small. I don't agree with that. I agree that this must be the time that we should be as brave as we can, knowing it's risky. They could come after you. They could do anything, but you still gotta be out there. You still gotta be able to tell the story. You still gotta be able to control the narrative. So to answer the question, Avery, about What do I advise people? I advise people to be as out there as possible, as at the table to tell your story as possible, as able to talk to journalists as possible, because these are the times for us to be able to be as loud as the administration has been. And someone else has said it earlier, that the intention is to throw so much at the wall to see what sticks. No one's seen like 20 executive orders on day one. The intention is not to get all of them passed into law, but it's to throw so much at the activists and the people who are fighting this that they don't know where to start. And now is the time to strategize and to be as intentional about what we're going to start with and what we're going to do as possible. And the people we're fighting for are part of the fight. They got to be there with us. They got to be as willing with us. They got to be as brave as us to make sure that we are here to resist this.
You are so powerful. I would follow you anywhere. Thank you so much. I see there's just heart after heart and claps. Like, you're getting so much love from the attendees and fellow panelists. Just thank you so much. So much of what you're saying of this question of like, well, how do we respond to the bad narratives that are put out there? And I love what you're saying. It's like, overwhelm them the way that they're overwhelming us with story, and that's one way that it's a huge way that the narrative can be shifted and changed. So yeah, just thank you so much. I'm like hyped up. All right, so Viles, excuse me. Can you share a little bit with us about how folks in your community feel about the current media coverage of immigration, and what do they want to see changed?
Yeah, I think that most part of the media coverage have been fair enough to share the truth, which is a very good thing. And I think that there are a couple of articles that we share with our network, just for them to see that there is a counter narrative of what has been said. And I think that some of the local media, they are trying to be accurate and tell the truth, even though they get some backlash or some criticism. But it's always good to share some articles with the neighbors, the immigrants, to know that some media coverage is good. So, and I would like that to continue. But at the same time, there's some media coverage who does a very bad work, and I think that they have their own agenda that we cannot normally stop them from doing what they are doing, but they always have a way to counteract that and just to be out there and tell what is the truth. So our responsibility is to keep those folks informed and open to the media when they come to us and try to tell them exactly what it is. Taking part in panel discussion and everything. We do everything in our power to make sure that we tell the truth when we have the chance just to give an interview or anything as such, because at the end of the day, we Haitians, we are a resilient people. We are not back down, as my sister says, and the thing with us is that we've been through a lot from Haiti with all those gangs violence down there. What is happening here has been affecting us, but we're making sure that we're still doing what we've been doing and be the people that we are. We know that our responsibility, we know what we are here for. And we are here in Springfield to make sure that we we help boosting the economy. And the good thing about us is that I think that some of the media coverage know that is that we are here as peaceful citizens. We are more victims of crimes than us committing crimes. And we do not have like Haitian or immigrants who are getting involved in crimes here. We are peaceful citizens, and we work hard. So I think that this is the narrative that should be told out there. So and we'll be there just to continue to tell it and to give a interview to the media and tell our own story as best as we can.
Thank you so much. Claudia, drawing from your expertise and experience as a former journalist, reporting stories that matter to our communities, but also as an immigrant who's advocating for policy change, what are the immigration stories you'd like to see reported in the news today? What is missing from the conversation? And I feel like you definitely spoke to this earlier, but yeah, would love just to dig in a little deeper there.
Yeah, like you said, I kind of like already touched on what I would like to see on the media, and a lot of the panelists here have been talking about storytelling, and I firmly believe that that is very powerful. And I can only think of an example, and I think a lot of us immigrants will resonate with this. How many of us have a neighbor, a Native American neighbor that loves that and loves coming to our barbecues, and their kids talk and go to school together and play together, and they love learning from our culture, and they would say, yes, everybody else but my neighbor, they're good people, they are hardworking people, they are good citizens, but the others are the problem. So the reason why I'm bringing this example up is, first of all, it has happened to me a lot. I've emigrated to this country 22 years ago from Uruguay, and always lived in very, very white conservative neighborhoods. And I always had very conservative neighbors that were very lovely to me, and they were always very happy to come to my barbecues and learn about my food and my music and my culture. But I knew who they voted for, who they were supporting. And I think that it is very interesting, and it tells you how when people learn firsthand from these stories and understand that we are not that different, we are the same people, we have the same needs, we come here and we just want to work, we want to send our kids to good schools, we want to live in safe neighborhoods just like them. That brings up a human face to the story, right? And I think that is what is missing from a lot of the media coverage about immigration. Definitely, I think it does happen, but it doesn't happen often enough. The other piece that I would like to talk a little bit about more is about education, and not just education in schools. I want to talk about how we should be educating our leaders, our policymakers, our legislators. Sometimes we hear these people on TV talking about immigration, and we're like, how on earth are you in Congress if you have no idea what you're talking about? You don't understand the system. You don't understand the law about immigration. And this is what people are talking about. And this is what people repeat. And this is what resonates with the general population. So I don't know how we can do that, but I think educating our policymakers is key to make them understand that they need to be able to communicate better about the laws, that they should know better. They should know about these laws better than we do. And finally, yes, let's talk about more about the hurdles of the immigration system. We were very, very close to pass legislation in 2013. That's when I got involved in immigration, in the immigration fight. And back then, I was not a US citizen yet. And among a lot of people who were also in the same situation nationwide, we started pushing for the passage of this bill that was passed in the Senate and then got stuck in the House of Representatives. And we started pushing our legislators, and it didn't work at the end of the day, but I think we at least we got the attention of a lot of people in the advocate communities, and we started learning also too how the system works, right? How democracy works. And also we understood that it was important to educate about the importance of becoming a US citizen if you are a green card holder. And if you become a US citizen, you need to register and vote. So I think that everybody, like we said, some people said before in the panel, we all have a different role in this movement. And sometimes we get caught in the reactive moment because we're being attacked, and we need it. We're always working on an emergency, right? And it's very needed. It is absolutely needed. We need information out there for our communities so they can be safe and they can know about their rights. But we also need the group of people who work on a more long-term solution to the problem of immigration.
Thank you so much, Claudia. Lynn, something that you've talked about a lot throughout this conversation is how immigrants and people who aren't immigrants and how they need to work together as being a key part of organizing and advocacy around immigration. You kind of touched on already, but why is that so important, especially in regards to how we are communicating?
Well, I'll just give an example. In 2017, we were doing a public campaign to try to stop the deportation of Jesus Lara, an Ohio father from Willard. And we went to his town to do a petition drive, right? We were walking around to businesses, asking people to sign a petition to Congressman Bob Gibbs to get involved and stop Jesus's deportation. I was at a gas station with Jesus's daughter, Elsie. She was about 7. And we were walking in to speak to customers, and a man came up to us and started screaming at us about how everything Trump was doing was correct and the right thing to do. And, just basically went off on us, me and this little girl whose dad was about to be taken from her. And we walked inside. The gas station attendant was a young man, white man, probably in his early 20s, came around, asked us what was going on, took our petition and made copies of it and said, you know what? I grew up without a father, and I don't think anybody should have to go through that. So he went home and filled out 2 whole sheets of the petition with his family members and friends to sign it. And he took pictures and sent them back to me, and we added them into our pile for the day. I don't know how he voted, if he voted, but if you look at Willard, the town itself, a white person from Willard most likely would have voted Trump if they had voted. But he connected with Elsie from the shared experience of not having a father in your life. So those are the kind of moments where, people can set aside what they think they know about immigration and just get, like, on a personal level, identify with another person right in their space. So it's moments like that. And I talk about that in the Medium piece that Angela's going to write down, because I think it is such a powerful example of just a small thing that actually meant so much to all of us that were working on this case. And that I hope the young man also took away with himself and the people that he talked to about Jesus's situation. So that's just one example.
Thank you, Lynn. It's a very powerful example. And then Jona, related to what Lynn has been saying, one way for people who aren't immigrants to stand with migrant communities is participating in direct actions and acts of solidarity. So to that point, OPAWL and Ohio Immigrant Alliance started the Ohio Stands with Immigrants petition, which currently has over 1,800 signatures and more than 75 organizations signed on. So can you tell us more about this letter to local officials, why it's important, and how you want people to use the petition in local efforts?
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, Claudia mentioned earlier that, people sometimes think that all of this is happening in the federal level, but there is a lot that our local elected officials can do. So our goal for this letter was for all of us to be able to communicate to our local elected officials different ways and actionable things that they could do to protect immigrants in our communities. So this letter has specific steps that you could ask your leaders to incorporate in their locally in your cities, towns, and counties. So our goal is for you to be able to use this to go to meet with your elected officials and say, I want our town to show immigrants that they are welcome here, that we want them to thrive, that we want our city, our town, our county to be a safe place for all immigrants. So that's our goal. Another way to do this too is if your city or your town already has these things in action, then it's a way for you to thank your cities and your towns and your counties leaders to thank them for doing what they can, and therefore like making sure that they know that supporting immigrants is something that's important to people in your town. So we will also be contacting some of you in different cities. If we have like a good number of people who signed the letters, then we would try to work together with you and other organizations who have signed on to set up meetings with our leaders to make sure that they're here, that over 1,000 Ohioans want this, over 100 people in your city want this. So that's the goal with this letter. But I've also heard of people just printing it out and bringing it to meetings. So that's definitely something that I would like to encourage y'all to be able to do. Use it as an organizing tool, like find other people in your neighborhood who agree with you. Then you could go to your city council and our city to be welcoming. And I think another important part about it is I've heard from folks who have been impacted by our immigration system, like feeling like there's not a lot happening right now in terms of like the resistance, in terms of people fighting for them. There's no large march. There's no, like lawyers in the airport fight, like in the Trump 1.0. Because I think it's just been a bit quieter. So my hope too is that this is also like a love letter from us to immigrants in our community to show them that we are doing something. We may not be, I mean, I know some people were on the streets this past weekend and that was amazing, but there are people who are willing to stand and fight for them in their own communities and in their own local neighborhoods. So
Thank you so much, Jona. That was really beautiful, the love letter to immigrants and immigrant communities. Thank you for your work. So y'all, time moves really fast, and we are in the last 10 minutes of today's panel, and we want to respect y'all's time and our panelists' time. So we pulled one question out that we're going to ask panelists to offer an answer to for whoever wants to answer. And then we'll also make sure we've saved the questions that have come up in the Q&A. And if there's a question you'd like to ask, the bottom row of your screen, there should be a Q&A button. You can ask a question there, and we'll make sure that gets answered and sent out with the follow-up information. So you'll get the video recording and you'll get the answers to the questions. But before we move to wrap up, we pulled out the question that somebody asked in the Q&A, which is, with the story of immigration being co-opted by the right, how do we deal with bad faith arguments and actors? And I think our panelists spoke a lot to this, but I think, yeah, the question of this question of how do we deal with bad faith arguments and actors? If any of the panelists are interested in answering that question, we would love to hear your thoughts.
I can start just by saying what we've learned from communications researchers is that you don't repeat the arguments of the other side. Don't repeat their framing, don't repeat, even to rebut their question. Instead, lay out the affirmative vision of what you want to see. So I guess that's all I have to say about that.
And I think in Springfield, I met so many folks that have that approach bad faith actors in everything. All that I do is just to take time, listen to them, and making sure that, as I said and from the start, I tell them what I know about myself or tell them my story. I took part in a panel discussion with somebody. She was just sitting by me and lying about my race and my country and everything. And after the panel discussion, I was asking her, where do you get that courage? And I told her, I am here. I think that the best approach is that if you want to know something about me, you should ask me. And she told me that all this information that I shared, I got them from your country neighbor. And I said, this is the worst place to go, because you cannot go to somebody who do not like me to ask the person information about me. So yeah, you will face those people, but the best approach is that try to, it will ask a courage for you to listen to them lying about you. But at the end of the day, it's the reality. It will ask you to keep your demeanor and to keep your calmness, and to ask to tell them next time you want to know something about me, feel free to come to me with any question that you have, and I will be open just to answer your question and tell you what is true, because telling lie about people is hurting the people, but at the same time hurting yourself. So that's the way it is.
Amazing. Thank you, Viles and Lynn, for answering that. So we are going to wrap up now in the last 5 minutes, and we would love for our panelists to tell folks how they can donate, volunteer, stay in touch, follow your work, and yeah, just to reach out and support you and your communities. So Jona, we'll start with you and OPAWL.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you for this opportunity again. So yes, please, you can learn more about OPAWL from our website, OPAWL, OPAWL.org. We have a lot of information there about the work we do, and how you can contribute if you're interested in being a member, if you identify as an AAPI woman or non-binary and gender non-conforming person in Ohio, please, you are welcome to join OPAWL. And also please share with your networks. And you can also follow us on socials, well, specifically Instagram and Facebook at Team OPAWL. Yeah, thank you so much.
Perfect. Claudia, how can we stay updated on the Planned Parenthood Advocates of Ohio and the RAISE program that you're leading?
Yes, thank you. So yeah, you can look us up on Planned Parenthood Advocates of Ohio. You can follow everything. You can register to get into our newsletter. If you choose among the different programs, if you choose RAISE, RAIZ, you will get information about different events and actions that we're having here in Northeast Ohio and in the rest of the state. Also, you can register to become a volunteer with us. And I believe that those links are being shared in the chat. So thank you so much.
Yes, they are. And I appreciate your fellow Planned Parenthood colleagues doing some of that work for me. Houleye, tell us more about how we can follow your work.
Sure, thank you. You can learn more about the Mauritanian Network for Human Rights. We have a website, themauritaniannetwork.org. We are also on Facebook. We under the same name, the Mauritanian Network, and we are also on Instagram. You could follow us there. For those that live in Columbus, we have a community center here, and we have English classes every Friday. We're always looking for volunteers to assist us with English class. It's from 4 to 6 every Friday. And also, if you would like to learn more about Mauritania and Mauritanians, we have Mauritania Day every year around October. Usually it's the last weekend of October is when we do it. We would like people to come to learn more about us. And I urge people who would like to connect to the Mauritanian community to often find out where Mauritania is. That's a good start. And also ask the questions about why, not only why Mauritanians are here, but why they left. Because Mauritanians left a whole host of human rights abuse back in their country that we've been fighting against for more than for about 60 years now since the independence. And we feel like that's been going on because the world doesn't know enough about Mauritania and what's happening there. Countries don't have morals, they have interests. But if the human beings, the people, you and me know more about the human rights abuse, eventually the world will say enough is enough and another Mauritania will be born. Thank you. Thank you,
Houleye. Viles, how can people support the Haitian Community Help and Support Center?
Yeah, they can support us through our website and also our Facebook page, Haitian Community Help and Support Center. The DBA is Haitian Support Center, so they can connect with us and send us an email, and anyhow we can get back to them.
Perfect. And then last but not least, Lynn, how can we keep up with all the amazing work that Ohio Immigrant Alliance is leading?
Sure. Our primary website is ohioimmigrant.org, but our resource website for everything related to know your rights, know your role, how to stay safe, how to protect your community in these troubled times is ohioishome.org. We have a hotline for people to report abuses or to request information, legal referrals, things of that nature. Hotline at ohioimmigrant.org is the email, and 419-777-HELP, HELP, is the phone number. You can also sign up for our email list to get more notices about events like this, and I think we're dropping the link in the chat. Thanks, everybody, and thanks to Ohio Voice for just an amazing, incredible event.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you all.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our interpreter. And thank you everyone for attending. We will be sending the recording out to everyone who registered, as well as all of the links that were dropped in the chat, plus some other resources. So you can look out for that in the next couple days. Thank you all. Stay warm, stay safe out there. And thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
I was like, thank you. That was beautiful. I'm starting to lose my voice.
Go rest, Jona. Everyone,
Thank you.
go rest.